about Lukashenko and his uneasy relations with Putin. On the 21st of April, the official channel of Belarus Border Control complained that Poland and Lithuania hamper the truck flows from the EU to Belarus. The question is, why would Poland and Lithuania allow any traffic at all? Belarus is the main Russian smuggling channel and trade proxy. For years, Belarus has been the main hole in Russian customs system. It's common knowledge in Russia. Consider the meme about the Belarusian octopuses. Since the late 1990s, Russian discourse focused on imperial restoration. Collapse of the USSR was a tragedy because we lost lots of land and people. Therefore, we must promote some sort of integration to take it back. Slavic Ukraine and Belarus were the priority, of course. Unfortunately, Ukraine showed very little enthusiasm in this integration. On the bright side, Belarusian dictator Lukashenko was much more cooperative. In 1997 he signed a union treaty with Russia. In December 1999, it was transformed into the Union State of Russia and Belarus. Both sides acted in their self-interest. Self-interest of Kremlin was in boosting its legitimacy. President Yeltsin was absolutely hated. His rate of approval was probably about 6%. Integration with Belarus would boost his legitimacy because nobody in Russia saw it as integration. Integration of such wildly unequal powers as Russia and Belarus would be viewed as the annexation of Belarus by Russia, which would make a ruler in Kremlin a collector of the Russian land, kind of new Ivan the Great. Both Yeltsin and Putin needed this reputation desperately. What was the self-interest of Lukashenko then? Well, that changed over the time. Everything changes over the time and human goals change, too. The first thing we need to understand about Lukashenko is that he is a smart guy, like really smart, way smarter than Yeltsin or Putin. Consider how Lukashenko was talking with Putin. I'm upset that Putin didn't promote me to a colonel. I'm still a lieutenant colonel. He promised to make me a colonel but didn't. If Putin makes me a colonel, then I'll make him a general. Last punchline is really good.
2 назад Александр Григорьевич Лукашенко несколько с обидой сказал, что просит у Владимира Путина, что вы до сих пор подполковник, чтобы он вам дал полковника. И вот если Путин даст полковника, то я Путину дам генерала. Вот что здесь правда, что здесь шутка?
Александр Григорьевич не нуждается в том, чтобы глава другого государства присваивал ему звание. Он сам большой начальник. Я, как вы знаете, генеральских званий не имею, чинов, но верно служу народу, и мне военные звания, конечно, они нужны прежде всего военным людям. А Александр Григорьевич, он там на переднем крае, ему эти погоны нужнее, чем мне. Но он сам.
Было бы неплохо, если бы я тоже был полковником. Правда в том, что он мне обещал, но до сих пор не присвоил.
Если обещал, сделаем.
How does Lukashenko get away with such behavior? By playing an idiot. Here, for example, he shows how the special operation is going, accidentally disclosing how Ukraine will be divided after the victory. Do we know it's the real plan of partition? IDK. But that's a statement. Lukashenko told that massacre in Bucha was a psychological operation by the Englishmen. Plate numbers of cars on which the English drove to Bucha can be provided by the Russian Federal Security Service. Look on Putin. He's super uncomfortable. Because Lukashenko is doing sabotage.
Это как в Буче. Вот мы обсуждали эту политику. Все кричат. Надо было ввести очередной пакет, нам это известно. Мы сегодня обсуждали подробно эту их спецоперацию, психологическую операцию, которую провели англичане. Если вам кому-то нужны адреса, пароли, явки, номера автомобилей, марки их, на которые приехали в Бучу и как это делали, ФСБ России может представить эти материалы. Если нет, то мы можем в этом плане помочь. Вместе с российскими нашими друзьями мы полностью с первого до последнего часа раскрыли эту гадкую, мерзкую позицию Запада.
Our consciousness is clear. They started shooting 2 days before. I'll show you a map of their plans to invade Belarus. If 6 hours before we hadn't made a preventive strike, they'd attack. It's good. We did it. Biological weaponry, nuclear plants. It was all ready to blow up.
Превентивно ВСУ начали стрелять, когда еще мы с вами за 2 дня были у вас дома.
К сожалению.
Да, мы это с вами сидели в вертолете и докладывали постоянно. Они начали. А я сейчас вам покажу, откуда на Беларусь готовилось нападение. И если бы за 6 часов до операции не был нанесен превентивный удар по позициям, 4 позиции, я сейчас покажу, карту привез, они бы атаковали наши войска Беларуси и России, которые были на учениях. Поэтому не мы развязали эту войну, у нас совесть чиста. Хорошо, что начали. Биологическое оружие, самые большие электростанции атомные. И все это было готово взорвать. Не сделали бы это за сутки до того, поверьте, через несколько дней мы бы испили всю эту чашу с огромными потерями. Еще раз говорю, они не только по Донбассу готовились нанести удар. Они выстроили позиции для нанесения по Беларуси удара.
Lukashenko refers to the Ukrainian biological weaponry, but claims they planned to blow up their own nuclear plants as well. His narrative is a combination of normal Russian propaganda with cartoonishly exaggerated claims, and the latter invalidate the former. That's a sabotage. How does Lukashenko get away with all of this? Well, by playing stupid. He's playing a naive but well-intentioned bumpkin. Of course he's making mistakes, but don't judge him too harsh. He doesn't know any better. That's a strategy. His rural equals low status image is also a strategy. In Russia, Lukashenko was mocked as kolkhoznik, a collective farm worker. Kolkhozniks were low-status semi-serf population which didn't even have passports, equals couldn't move out. Before 1974, there's a strong prejudice against rural people, combining social racism with just racism. Why is Lukashenko playing a naive kolkhoznik then? Well, that's a strategy. Nobody will expect smart scheming from him, whereas in fact he's a master schemer. Now we know Lukashenko as a dictator, but in early 1990s he was an oppositional politician and an anti-corruption fighter. Fearless criticism of rotten political establishment made Lukashenko a leader of the opposition. Government didn't dare to just fake the elections, because they were shocked by the collapse of the USSR and didn't know how much fraud they are allowed to do under the new order. Lukashenko was the most popular politician in Belarus. His platform was unobjectionable, against corruption and electoral fraud. And who'll advocate for corruption and electoral fraud? Nobody will. Thus he became an MP, then a leader of the opposition and finally the president. Of course, after being elected he usurped power and built a dictatorship, aiming to create something like a hereditary quasi-monarchy. Notice his minor son Kamil near his dad, also in uniform and in epaulets, the heir apparent. Lukashenko is a skilled politician, far superior than Putin. The only example of almost Lukashenko-level public politician in Russia that I know of is Navalny, who is using a very similar strategy. I'll soon write a thread on why I stand against the Muscovite liberal opposition. So what did Lukashenko try to achieve by promoting the union with Russia? Well, initially he wanted to rule Russia. The frail and unpopular Yeltsin couldn't rule for much longer. As long as Lukashenko hoped to succeed him, he pursued a policy of genuine integration with Moscow. Lukashenko used to be wildly popular in Russia and was often viewed as a potential savior of the empire who would collect the Russian land. It didn't work out. Frail Yeltsin appointed a young and healthy heir who soon became super popular by pacifying Chechnya. Now Putin became the collector of the Russian land, counting the tradition of the Dukes of Moscow. Lukashenko was outmaneuvered, and his policy goals changed. In 1990s Lukashenko was probably genuine about the integration. That's understandable. He hoped to be the supreme leader of the new Russian Empire. After 2000, however, annexation of Belarus by Russia meant that he would be, at best, the regional governor of that empire. Fuck it. Since 2000 Lukashenko has been building his dynastic quasi-monarchy. He didn't break up with Russia, of course. Instead he milked it economically in every way possible. How could he do it? By luring Putin with prospects of integration. Putin was very predictable and Lukashenko used it. Lukashenko could buy Russian resources for almost free. Union tariff system effectively subsidized the export of his uncompetitive goods to Russia. He borrowed massively from the Russian state and its private proxies. These loans were mostly never repaid. That's all well known. Belarus was buying Russian oil and gas at the dump prices. Because of the Union state, Russian oil and gas exporters to Belarus didn't have to pay custom duties. It allowed Lukashenko to buy Russian oil at prices far below market, process it on his refineries and export to Europe. And yet, in 2015 Russia started a tax maneuver aiming to reduce oil export custom duties to zero. Lukashenko demanded a compensation of $3.4 billion. According to RBC, Putin agreed to pay $300 million. Why would Russia pay anything? Well, Dmitry Medvedev explained it better than anyone else. Belarus made 31 roadmaps for integration with Russia, raised 31 demand. Even one roadmap we didn't agreed on, demand we rejected, may threaten our integration process, told Medvedev. Indeed, after a previous round of negotiations in 2019, Lukashenko played anger. Our economy is only losing. Sorry, but for which fuck do we need such a union? Peskov responded that Kremlin has heard Lukashenko but still believes in immutability of the union. Lukashenko knows Putin must keep on integrating with Belarus. He's just too invested in the union, which allows him to play the collector of the Russian land and thus legitimize his rule. This makes Putin predictable and thus exploitable. That's how a tail wags the dog. This conclusion looks less of exaggeration if you consider the context of Russia-Belarus negotiations and read Medvedev replique once again. Even a single roadmap not agreed upon, a single Lukashenko's demand not met, may threaten our rebooted process of integration. Notice the word rebooted. It implies that Kremlin previously initiated the process of integration, but then it stopped for some reason. Then we rebooted it. But if we anger Lukashenko in any way, it may be stopped again. Putin is very predictable. Lukashenko has a carrot which Putin needs desperately. Illusion of integration with Belarus allows Putin to maintain his image of collector of the Russian land and thus legitimize his power within Russia. Putin needs Lukashenko's goodwill to keep the show going. Let me tell you a story that shows how far Putin will go in order to avoid displeasing Lukashenko. Urocle is a potash fertilizer producer very close to Kremlin and personally controlled by Putin's friends. Sergei Kemzov, a member of Putin's inner circle, is its chairman. The fact that a potassium company is controlled by a Putin's friend is systemic. Why would Putin's personal friends, the most dominant people in Russia, aim to control it? Because this industry is simple enough to generate cash for a long time under incompetent management. Let's visualize the dominance hierarchy within Russian economy. Oil and gas are the simplest lucrative industries, thus they are dominated by Putin's friends. Metallurgy is more complicated, so it's run by old 1990s oligarchs. Machinery is even more complex, so it's left for losers. I discussed this negative correlation between complexity of an industry and the dominance rank of an interest group controlling it before. What is important now is that potassium fertilizer production is an industry simple enough to be very close to Kremlin. Unfortunately, Urocle's CEO Vladislav Baumgartner angered Lukashenko. Why? Some say he competed with Belarusian potassium fertilizer producers too hard. Others argue that he showed disrespect, crossing his legs when talking to Lukashenko. After negotiations with Lukashenko in 2013, Baumgartner was arrested. Our PM invited that weasel. He crossed his legs and told, "This won't happen. That won't be." He left, spit on our cabinet house and drove to airport laughing. And there he was arrested, explained Lukashenko. After the arrest, Baumgartner was put into a 6-square-meter cell where he spent a month wearing the same suits he had during the negotiations with the president. He and Russian oligarch Karimov, in absentia, were charged with economic crimes and faced up to 10 years of prison. 2 Russian deputy prime ministers, foreign ministry, and a president aide condemned the arrest of Baumgartner and demanded his release. Lukashenko refused, so Russian government had to indict him with crimes as well. On the 14th of October he was charged and on 17th arrested in absentia. On the 21st of October Lukashenko declared he can release Baumgartner for a compensation of $1.5 to $2 billion. On the 21st of November he was extradited to Russia and put to a Moscow jail 5. Extradition was the only chance to get him out of Belarus, so Kremlin abided to Lukashenko's rules. Rehabilitation of Baumgartner was very gradual. On the 10th of December, 2013 he was released from prison and put under the house arrest. On the 17th of September, 2014 he was released from the house arrest, and only on the 20th of February, 2015 Russia finally cleared him of all charges. That's not the craziest part of this story. According to the Russian Izvestia newspaper in October 2013, Belarusian state security hunted Uralkali top managers in Moscow. They tried to arrest some of them on Leningradsky railway station in Moscow. Solodovnikov, Evstratov and Samoylov managers noticed strange cars that followed them 24/7 all around Moscow. They spent whole nights parked near those managers' homes. Uralkali security officers approached those guys and they told straight out that they are Belarus KGB officers. Uralkali Security Service reported, "They don't really hide and act as if they feel their impunity. When we approach them and ask them to introduce themselves, they just show their Belarus KGBs." Lukashenko's agents spied over Russian managers in Moscow and didn't even hide. Lukashenko's agents tried to kidnap Samoylov. They were pretty straightforward. Samoylov was on a train ready to depart from Moscow to St. Petersburg. They just entered the train and forced him out, but he screamed for police, which eventually made them release Samoylov. So what does the story of Putin and Lukashenko teach us? First, how easy it is to manipulate Putin if you understand him. Putin is way more powerful than Lukashenko, and yet, the latter still wags the dog, because he pretends he'll give Putin the carrot and yet, never gives it. Westerners are afraid to provoke Putin or give him pretext for escalation. Lukashenko isn't afraid at all. Hardly a day passes without Lukashenko giving Putin yet another pretext for the escalation, and Putin backs off, because pretexts play no role in his decision to escalate. Second, difference between phenomena and noumena. If he looks as a buffoon, it may be his strategic decision. A buffoon can threaten, blackmail, insult with audience thinking it's silliness of a bumpkin who doesn't know any better and can bear no responsibility for his actions. Lukashenko repeatedly exaggerated pro-Russian narrative, effectively reducing it to the absurd, and yet, nobody perceived it as a sabotage. Instead, people saw it as a silliness of a buffoon and made memes on Lukashenko showing the map of intended Ukrainian attack on Belarus.
Поэтому не мы развязали эту войну, у нас совесть чиста. Хорошо, что начали. Биологическое оружие, самые большие электростанции атомные.
This one might be much better actually.
Не был нанесен превентивный удар по позициям. 4 позиции, я сейчас покажу, карту привез. Они бы атаковали наши войска Беларуси и России, которые были на учениях. Поэтому не...
Third, it shows that the anti-corruption and anti-election fraud agenda can be a perfect cover for a power-hungry politician. Why? Because it's unobjectionable. Focus on something unobjectionable to silence anyone who will point out that your plans are quite sinister. If we think in higher orders, the story of the Union State illustrates the phenomenon of something Samo Berger might have possibly called a dead institution. Originally it was designed to serve Yeltsin's and Lukashenko's self-interests and was very much workable. Yeltsin could legitimize his rule showing himself as an imperial restorer. Lukashenko hoped to inherit Yeltsin's power over Russia when he dies. But after Putin came to power, Lukashenko had no motivation to aim for the real integration anymore. It was a dead institution now, on Belarusian octopuses. Since Belarus is the main hole in the Russian customs system, pretty much all of smuggling to Russia goes through this country. When Russia prohibited European food imports in 2014, Russian market was flooded by the seafood produced in a landlocked Belarus. For years Lukashenko smuggled European consumer goods to Russia. However, now he might earn much more by organizing Russian technological import necessary to keep Russian supply chains and this war going on. That's why any European trade flows to Belarus must be stopped. End of thread.